Good afternoon. My name is Dave Tatman, and I'm delighted to spend some time with you today to share some of my thoughts on leadership. I'm doing this at the request of Cecile Garmer from the Center of Leadership Excellence, and it's been my pleasure to meet and to work with Cecile on a number of things. You see, I worked for General Motors for 34 years. I was a plant manager in 5 different locations in 3 countries on 2 continents. So I think over the course of time, I've understood a little bit about leadership. And I think that the opportunity to share those thoughts with people like yourself or Cecile and others is absolutely imperative, I think, because I learned a lot of lessons along the way, some of them more difficult than others, but I think it's entirely appropriate that we have an opportunity to share these thoughts. Today I want to spend some time today talking with you about leading through a crisis. The idea here is that leadership skills are always at test, no matter what you're doing. But I think that in times of crisis, your leadership skills become absolutely imperative. There's a difference between leading and managing. Managing is the sort of the numbers side of things. Leading is the cultural side of things. And leading is the thing that I think leads to success through a crisis period. And let me tell you about a little crisis that, actually a big crisis that I experienced in my career at General Motors. Back in 2008, I was finishing an assignment in Brazil. I had been in Brazil for a number of years, running a couple of engine plants and transmission plant down there for General Motors. And I came back to the U.S. And I came back, I think, in June of 2008. And there really was not an open assignment for me at that point. So I was in central office working on special assignment for a little bit, till August of 2008, just a couple of months. And my boss came to me and said, hey, he said, I want you to go be the next plant manager at the Willow Run transmission plant. Now, that doesn't mean much to many people, except to me. I had started my GM career at the Willow Run transmission plant. This was a 5 billion square foot facility just outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, the world's largest transmission plant, about 2,600 employees. It was a huge operation, and I was very excited to lead it. But I was even more excited to lead it because it was my home plant. I had started there right out of college. I worked at Willow Run Transmission for 12 years, from the time I graduated from university until I left, and 16 years later, I got to come back as the plant manager. What an experience. Because of those 2,600 employees, I probably knew 1,000 of them by name, because I had spent the first 12 years of my career in entry-level positions throughout the plant. Even though it was a huge plant, I met many, many people. And so when I came back to the plant, it was like a homecoming. It was great. It was really a great opportunity. I had the opportunity, we went through some training classes, some meet the employee classes, so I get to talk in small group settings with probably all 2,600 employees in a very short order. But if you'll think back with me, in the fall of 2008, that was when the wheels came off the financial services industry, and thus affected the automotive industry. Affected the automotive industry dramatically. There were periods of time where it was unclear if we were even going to have a company, that is General Motors, even as opposed to a job. And that culminated on June 9th of 2009, when I had to stand in front of those 2,600 employees and tell them that we were going to close our plant. Now think about that. This is my home plant. This is where I grew up. These people were like my family. They were my friends. They were the ones that were dependent on me to lead them through a crisis. Well, the crisis was not my making, and the crisis was not anything that I had any great power over. But the crisis that was at my hand, that I did have control over, was how we as an organization would respond. And to me, that set us off on a path of communication. One of the principles of leadership that I have come to understand is that people can handle bad news. What they can't handle is anything less than the truth. Let me say that again. People can handle bad news. What they can't handle is anything less than the truth. So if I was going to stand up in front of all these employees and tell them the corporate speak things about don't worry, things are going to be okay and all that kind of jazz, they'd see right through it. And they would know, and they would feel disillusioned at best, probably angry at worst. And so, and even as uncertain as their future was, my future was equally uncertain too. As I said, we didn't know if we were going to have a company, let alone a job. So I began a series of meetings with our employees. I met with large groups of employees, 800, 1,000 at a time. I met with small groups, 6 or 8 people at a time. I met with salary employees. I met with hourly employees. I met with skilled tradespeople. I met with our union committee. I met with people consistently and exponentially busy in that kind of time, telling them what it was that I knew about what our fate was and how that was going to play itself out. See, I think that the idea of being open and honest and transparent with your employees is always important, but it's particularly so in a time of crisis. So as we worked our way through that crisis, the announcement was made in June of 2009, and we were going to build out. Immediately, half our plant stopped production. We had a brand new 8-speed transmission there that we'd spent millions of dollars to tool and to build, but we were building in another location in Toledo, Ohio. We didn't need both plants running, so we immediately stopped the 8-speed production, but we continued in some other older transmission lines, and we would continue those until they built out in December of 2010. So think about that. From June of 2009 to December of 2010, we were going to run our plant with the specter of the plant closing over our heads. How do you produce quality transmissions in that environment when everybody's worried about their job? But again, it comes back to this communication issue. It comes back to telling our people what I knew and when I knew it. If I didn't know, I'd tell them I didn't know. It was very important. Interestingly, as that scenario played itself out, we successfully finished our run of transmissions. We built the highest quality transmissions we'd ever built on that product line as we finished the time. Everybody who wanted to continue to work for General Motors, I was able to find a job for. So of those 2,600 employees, a number of them retired, but all of them who wanted to continue to work for GM, we were able to find work for. Of our salaried employees, every salaried employee, at 120 salaried employees, every one of them, a few retired, but every one of them we were able to find jobs in other places. Now, they weren't always in the same town. They might have had to move their homes, but the reality was they could finish their career with General Motors. So I think that the attitude of the people is what was really critical to our success, and the attitude of our people was profoundly affected by my ability to communicate with them openly, honestly, and transparently. And that brings us to that principle again. People can handle bad news. What they can't handle is anything less than the truth.